Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today's question comes from Jim Baranowski, who lives in Honduras. And he sent a question. Do people using Morse keys get carpal tunnel syndrome? The answer to that actually is yes. And let me show you what happens. Here's a Morse code key, okay? And some people tap on it. Some people grab it by the sides and move it back and forth. Now, what some people do improperly is and I'm not sure I can do this because I've been trained differently for so long, but they do all the movement from their wrist. It's all from the wrist. After about an hour, your wrist is going to start to hurt. Your carpal tunnel is a little spot inside your wrist where a lot of the tendons come here. The muscles that operate your hand are up here. Okay, the muscle, and it's just tendons that flow into the hand and cause the hand to work. So you're doing this kind of thing, and you're constantly bending that, and after a while it's going to start to hurt. After a few years you're going to have real problems. The proper way to send Morse code is elbow on something and then da 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 da. Note that the basic movement is coming from the elbow, and the wrist is kind of limp. And then you can send Morse for hours doing that. Now, this was a big problem during World War II. The Navy, I think it was the Navy that was pushing this, made all the ships have straight keys. And they would have to have a number of people on board who understood Morse code so they could cover all shifts or cover periods of extra intensity. And they used straight keys. The straight key was bolted to the desk. And so they didn't use the Vibraplex or anything like that. So if you look at a J38, which I've gotten conflicting stories about its background, some people say it was used only as a training key. Other people say it was used operationally. It was before my time. So in any event, they use that, and it's got that up and down motion. And so you see people are doing this kind of thing. And yes, you can get carpal tunnel syndrome doing that. Back then, they didn't know about carpal tunnel syndrome. They just know that people's arms would get very sore. So sore that people called it a glass arm. If you just touched it, you'd react in great pain. And the way to avoid the glass arm, don't get it in the first place. Just let your wrist kind of flop, do the movement from the elbow, and you'll be fine. Or get a keyer, because that way the movement is back and forth between something like that, and you can get kind of a twist like this to get it going and put very little stress on this part right here. The first effort at that was called the cootie. It was just a straight key, but one on either side. And the idea was to push it this way for dits and this way for das. And then that way, so you're getting very little movement of the wrist. And then that led to the Vibraplex, which we all know and love today. I've got some interesting stuff to do on that one that I've been researching. And the Vibraplex did not just spring into existence. It has a long and glorious history. But in any event, if you do use the straight key, treat your arm nicely, okay? It's the only keying arm you've got. And to avoid this like this, which puts a compression force on the tendons and joints in here, it's recommended that you grab the key and you bring it through its movements. So actually, it's almost as though there were no spring. You push down, you pull up, you pull down, and so on. And you can send very, very nice Morse code for long periods of time doing that. In the Navy, they used to put a big knob up here. They called it the Navy knob. And you could just grab that thing real easily, much more easily than just grabbing the top of this. By the way, you can get these little ones with Navy knobs if you want one. Okay, so we've talked about Morse code. I hope you'll learn more about Morse code, get on the air, and not get a glass arm. So if you'd like to help support this channel financially, you can do so by going to dcasler.com/support. Pick a way that works for you. Until we next meet, 73.